app development, mobile gaming is becoming super big. I think they said about 60% of that revenue they generate comes from mobile games. And so that market's actually taking off a lot right now. And some universities are specializing in that and are making their students do that. Another area is virtual reality. That area is becoming really big too. I believe it was SMU that had a virtual reality like part of their program that they incorporated with that. And I think it was USC that had the like more mobile development aspect of that.
What portion of the games are just games to occupy time versus educational stuff? So, I mean, is there a game that teaches me calculus, for instance? Or
I can take that. I did research into games, and what I found was these games that tend to make their way out there, at least to the consumer, the most are games that are not increasingly educational, but more like, do I have something to pass my time with? But the thing with educational games is I found an article that spoke about how schools are trying to implement educational games into their schools, and that is definitely something to consider. But I believe that if we're trying to get our name out there to starting off with something that could become popular and bring in a stream of revenue that would allow us to create that other set of educational games would be definitely something to consider.
I'd kind of like to build on that question because I noticed in the second presentation, or maybe it was in your notes here, you said something about the Indie Foundation wanting to get behind games that had some kind of social relevance or social something. I couldn't remember the word to use. In any case, it just made me wonder, is, like ending with Illuminate here, is there a Baylor personality? Is there a way to attract foundational funding at more of a program level because of who Baylor is and our attentiveness to, building things that are not going to be socially harmful, at least,
Yeah, exactly.
we're going to, I just wondered if you had thought about that as a possible connection for Baylor. But
I'll be completely honest, I didn't think about that, but that's a great point. Like, I do not see what would be wrong with working with foundations, as Baylor already works with many to get their funding and their endowment. So working with these foundations that basically, they're all nonprofits, so they want people that are closer to their mission. So each one of these foundations have slightly different missions. Like the Indie Fund and the Indicate Fund are slightly different. But the Indie Fund, this particular one, is the first one. The Indie Fund is basically developers of indie games that have been really popular in the past come together and say, okay, we all want to put in money to get more people to develop indie games. The Indicate Fund had a slightly different perspective to this. They were like, we have something that we're trying to achieve in the world, and there's a little statement, and we want games that reach up to that statement.
that's the one that caught my attention, Indicate. Yeah, socially meaningful games, free from commercial pressure. Because eventually you could also sneak in a fun way to get better at algebra or something. I don't know. Anyway.
I think so.
After your first presentation, my question was going to be, what are the goals and priorities of each of these funding sources that you listed?
Yeah.
Because you're spot on with that
we
comment.
said that, and also with the government ones that I said, it's a lot of the educational ones. They focus on social issues, and they want games that bring prevalence to them, as well as educating in some way. So that's what we kind of put as our main deal. We market, figure out what we want to market, and create a game after it. The money to fund it, as well as commercialization, will be a lot easier when you have kind of a targeted
I was going to say that Baylor has added programs to meet the demand of industry as it's grown, and this is something that's just it's huge. But the idea here is that the educational, like, obviously it'd be great for you to provide that social. It's like a social responsibility, I think.
Yeah.
But the idea here is that you're equipping people that were already going to go into that industry with all of the skills that go into making one, which is just it's kind of crazy how much goes into it. None of us even understand it. The guys over there understand what all goes into it because they've been in it, and they can even tell you that to build their humble game has taken so much time. Like, you can only imagine what it would take to build a professional one. It's really phenomenal what they do and what all goes into it across all the departments. But one other thing that's cool, I heard, I had a buddy that was working for a game studio, and you know how C.S. Lewis, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe had like this like story similarity to the gospel. This guy was trying to build essentially video game stories that mirror the gospel to try to engage kids with that conversation and have it built into like the end credits. But it's still something that he loves doing in building games, and he can also influence his coworkers while building them. So the idea is if this industry is so big, why isn't Baylor sending in missionaries, student leaders into it to influence it in any capacity, even if it's not to build educational video games? So.
Just a question.
Hey, I hate to do this. In the interest of time, we're going to have to call this, and I'd like to give Dr. Fent a chance if you have any questions or comments you'd like to add.
Yeah, for the interest of time, I think I'll hold the questions, but I'd be interested in chatting with you guys by email or come join us on May 3rd, 11 to 1, where we unveil the game that we have been talking about here.
So it's here, correct?
And
This
it's
is
in
building?
Foster,
It's in
correct?
Foster, and there should be publicity going up around the building around that time. So come join us and see the results of our collaboration and our hard work.
Thank you. We'll plan on it. Let's give him a hand.